Marquette University Law School released its first poll since Governor Walker officially jumped into the presidential race.
The man who does that poll and who's here to tell us how 802 registered Wisconsin voters responded, Professor Charles Franklin from Marquette University. Let's start with the top line thing, Governor Walker. Running for president, he is the top choice among Republicans in Wisconsin. But other than that, he's not doing well in Wisconsin.
He's having a bit of a rough spot right now. He's leading in the primary with 25%. Carson's next at 13%, so that's a pretty hefty lead. But it's down from 40% in April when he first was talking about getting in the race. But other things that are problematic, his job approval is down to 39%, the worst that we've measured in more than 3.5 years of polling on the governor. And only 33% of the states say they really want him to run for president, that they like the fact that he's running.
We just came through a pretty tough budget process here while the governor was out running for president. Is that being held against him by voters?
It certainly looks like there's an element to that. In the fall last year before the election, 17% more people said that they thought the budget was in better shape than it used to be. Now, 5% more think it's in worse shape than it used to be. That's a 22-point swing on that number. That's a big growth in pessimism about the budget compared to where it was back last fall.
Let's look at the Democrats. Hillary Clinton, just a slight lead over Bernie Sanders in Wisconsin. Does that surprise you?
The Sanders is doing as well as he's doing is really interesting. Clinton's at 44, Sanders at 32. 12 points is 12 points. It's a decent lead. When we go back to April, though, the field was different. Sanders wasn't in. Clinton was at 58. Elizabeth Warren, who's not even running, was at 14. So things are really kind of unsettled in that Democratic race. I think it certainly shows Sanders has some real potential here in the state. We could have a very interesting race between the two of them.
On the Senate front, Russ Feingold's numbers in the last poll were off the charts. He was lapping Ron Johnson. He's come back to earth, which you probably expected to happen as people became more aware of this. But the thing that I found really interesting in your polling numbers is the people who have no opinion of Senator Ron Johnson is like a third of the voters have no opinion of him.
It's even more than that. It's 38% in this poll. In most of his time in office that we've been tracking, between 32 or 3 and 38 or 9, it's 38 this month, say that they don't know enough to have an opinion. By contrast, Tammy Baldwin, who's also a freshman senator, is down around 23% don't have an opinion. Feingold, after being out of office, is 26%. So Senator Johnson has not made himself a household name in the state. In fairness, a lot of people aren't as well known as you might think. Just as he was picked for vice president, Paul Ryan was not known by 35% of the state.
Interesting tidbits that come out of these polls, like the ones that you just mentioned. Anything in this recent poll that caught your eye?
Well, I think the most interesting thing is that every race has tightened a little bit since April. The two primary races have tightened a bit. When we look at head-to-head matchups for president, Clinton is leading the 4 Republicans tested, but by narrower margins than in the spring. And the Senate race, as we were just saying, went from a 16-point margin to just a 5-point margin.
And if it were a matchup in November of 2016 between Hillary Clinton and Scott Walker would lose the state of Wisconsin right now.
As of the moment, she has a 10-point advantage over him in that. She has just a 5-point advantage over Jeb Bush, but a bigger margin over Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. So, we are so far out early in the first quarter at least, that, we don't want to talk about how this is ultimately going to end, but in the same sense, if we could push it up a little bit, if you know what's happening halfway through the first quarter, that sure doesn't tell you how the game is going to end, but it gives you a sense of who's playing well, who's not playing well. That's what these things are worth looking at this point.
But when you know that Republicans have a tougher time winning Wisconsin in presidential year elections, these numbers have to make them go back and double check their work.
That is one of the big issues. In a midterm election, about 2.5 million people vote in the state. In a presidential year, 3 million do. That's an extra 500,000 voters that come in November. And better by a bit
Charles
for the
Franklin,
Democrats.
Thank you so much for coming in. We've got all the polling data up at TMJ4.com. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you.